What's up guys, welcome back. For today's video, we are going to be prepping for a foam shower pan on a concrete slab for curbless entry. Let's go. All right guys, so welcome back to the channel. So to get started for today, let me give you a little bit of a backstory. This shower was once your traditional shower with a curb, etc., etc. The homeowner actually cut away some of the slab to recess it because he wants a curbless entry for his mom. So we had to do some plumbing here. We had our plumber come in and set the drain because it's going to be a linear drain across the inside of the shower. So the slope's going to be running this way. And as you can see, the surface is all bumpy and messy, and we're going to be installing a foam shower tray in here. So we can't lay the foam shower tray on that. We have to level it and get it nice and flat. So we're going to show you how to do that with a couple of steps, nice and easy. Let's go. All right, guys, so a couple of steps before you can get to pouring your self-leveler. The first thing you want to do, obviously, is make sure your drain is set in the proper location, depending on which drain you're using, a center drain, linear drain, etc., etc. So we have that all set. The next thing we're going to do is find our high spot, because you want to pour the minimum required thickness for whatever product you're using over that high spot, right? So you find your high spot, whatever, just say 22 inches, for example. And if the minimum pour requirement is 1/8 of an inch, you're going to go 1/8 of an inch over that 22 inches. And I like to do this because I want to make sure that I'm pouring enough self-leveler. So I don't want to just go by the square footage on the bag and be like, oh, that'll cover this. Like, no, because sometimes you could be pouring 2 inches deep. That might not be enough. So just make sure that, and obviously disclaimer on everything, because you want to make sure that your product can even go that thick. So just be very careful. Double check with your product that you're using, check the data sheet, and check the back of the bag. Okay, so, and before I go any further, if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and let me know if you have any questions or comments, concerns, etc. I know you will. Anyway, so I already found my high spot, and my high spot is over here. So I'm going to pour based off of this spot right here. So we are at, let's see, we're at 21.5 inches. So just a quick disclaimer, right? It's kind of backwards when you're doing this. I like to set the laser up. You can do it a couple different ways. This is how I do it. So the bigger the number, the lower the floor is. So over here we have 22 and 5/8, I think. And over here, I think you moved the laser, so no, okay. And over here we have about 21.5. So obviously this is a smaller number. This is a higher point, larger number, lower point. Bam. Okay, so I already went around. I like to check the corners, I check the middle, I check the center, and I just go around and I'm like, okay, what's the highest? So that means that this side is going to be deeper. So that's why I always want to say, like, make sure that if you do your calculation, you're like, oh, I need about 2 bags, make sure you always get 1 extra, because the last thing you want to do is do your pour and it's not enough, and then you come the next day or you see in a couple hours that you need to do more. Like, that's extra work for no reason. Doing this little extra step is like, now you know how deep you need this to be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my hot glue gun, put spacers down there so I know how deep that needs to be. 1 and done. And I don't have to come back, and I don't have to be messing with it. I don't have to pour self-leveler and it not be level and me look like an idiot. So that's the point. That's the reason for doing that. So the next step, you always want to prime the surface. Most self-levelers recommend a primer. I mean, I think all of them do. And almost every product that's on the market also has a matching primer. But if you don't have matching primer, that's not a big deal. I've used 2 different, it doesn't matter. Just make sure you're priming the surface, and make sure that before you do so, you're cleaning it as much as you can. Obviously, it's almost near impossible when you have bare concrete or concrete that you've demoed. It's just the way it is. It's dusty. I'm going to probably wipe this down and then prime it, but try to get it as clean as humanly possible before you start applying any chemicals and trying to do your pour. So we're going to prime next. Then we're going to dam off our little drain, let that dry, and we'll pour. So all this is gonna do is just pick up some extra fine dust that's laying here that you can't really get with like a vacuum. As you can see, there's still like little rocks and pebbles and all of that stuff. My biggest concern is the fine dust because that's going to be a bond breaker. What we don't want to happen is our self-leveler to not bond. What would be the point of that, you know? All right, so this is why I always say to check the instructions because every product is so different. So this is the product we're using. We're using custom level RS, level quick RS for the pour. And so we just grabbed the same primer. I just checked the instructions on here. And so if you're applying this over a non-porous surface, which would be like the smooth concrete or something, it doesn't need to be diluted. But because we're applying it over a porous surface, it needs to be diluted with 3 parts water. So this is 1 quart, and so I have 3 quarts of water. And I can only speculate that that's because the concrete is going to be very porous and it's going to want to suck the moisture out, and it won't give enough time for the product to do its job. Always, like always, if you've been here a while, I'm always going to tell you to read the instructions, don't listen to me. So I'm going to get this mixed up, and then it also says you can apply with either a push broom for a very porous surface like we have, or this roller. I do wish I had a broom because it probably would make it a lot easier, but it is what it is. Wow, look at how cool that is. You missed a really cool shot. You missed it already. All right, so basically I just poured it in here because it's super watery. And I'm just spreading it around. Just make sure you get nice coverage on here. This is one of the more watery primers I've used. Some of it is like, some primers are like more sticky, yada, yada, yada. This is very liquid. But it was liquid when it came out of the bottle, so I'm just assuming that's what it's supposed to be like. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do, we primed the floor. It's dry. I'm going to dam off the drain. I typically use some spray foam. There's all different ways to do it, so just do it however you feel comfortable. There's just this plastic barrier here just so I can get a nice straight edge. If you don't have anything like that, just using this going around the circumference of the drain hole that you have is good enough. And then once you do your pour, you just like cut away the excess and you're good to go. Okay, so this next step is I'm just setting gauges. I like to use a hot glue gun with some spacers. You can use this method if you were doing this on a plywood subfloor, or you can also use screws. I like to use drywall screws too. Same premise. So we've decided that this high spot, which was at 21.5, we're going to bring it, so we're going to reduce that size because we want to make our pour off of this high spot. So we've decided that we're going to go 1/4 inch over this. So if it's at 21.5, we want our line on our laser to hit at 21.25. And then we're going to go around and make everything hit that line. So basically we're just going to go around and add our gauge pins until it reaches 21.25, and then we'll have a good estimation of where we're going to pour. We picked 1/4 inch because of how many like dips and valleys are in this concrete. We don't want to make the pour too thin and then not make it over one of these humps and then have like Mount Everest sticking out of our self-leveler. That would defeat the whole purpose. So I'm starting with my high spot like always, and then I'm just going to make everything off of that. And as far as how many pins you can do, I mean, I'm going to start with the 4 corners, do one in the center, and I probably won't do one here and in the center and the back. I'm going to do 7 total, so it'll be the 4 corners, the dead center, and then the center of the long sides of the pan. Just because I feel like too many is just too many, and I've done this so many times. It's just kind of how I want to do it. Yeah, so I'm going to go around and do 1, 2, I'm going to do here, I'm going to do here, I'm going to do in the center, I'm going to do the back 2 corners, and then it's time to send it. Okay, so now that we set our pins and stressed about 16 times about the depth of the pour and made sure we have enough bags on site. Prepped 3 buckets because we're estimating it's going to be about 3 bags, right? So then we have another bucket filled with the right amount of water and then another bag just in case we need it, because most self-levelers, I think all of them, start curing very quickly, and they don't do very well if you're moving very slow, or if, like, for example, you need to add another bag. So like, it's supposed to be a flowing process constantly. So you want to make sure that everything's set up beforehand, that you have no problems when you're pouring. We did everything, even cut open the bags, pre-measured the buckets. Notice, rapid setting. I think you have less than 15 minutes to get this stuff poured. Less than 15 minutes. So the process has to be smooth. So that's why me and Chris like to work together. He's usually the mixer, I'm usually the pourer and the yeller, and that's how this process goes. So we're gonna set the camera down. Chris is gonna start the mixing process, and I'm gonna drag the bucket in there and pour it out. And hopefully all goes well. Everything's covered, I'm happy. All right, so there you have it. Now this particular product requires at least 4 hours before you can walk on it. Again, always check with whatever product you're using, make sure that you're leaving it alone for the adequate time. And then some of them also have the times before you can install flooring over it. So make sure you're paying attention to that. As you can see, we're all done. We have a nice smooth surface. It's going to be all pretty when she's all dry. None of our gauges are sticking out. So again, the gauges just help to determine, to make sure that we're pouring enough self-leveler in here. We used a total of 3 bags, just a little under 3 bags. I just like to make sure that I cover all my gauges and that none of them are sticking out. So yeah, there you have it. This gives us a nice flat, level, smooth, perfect surface to accept a foam shower tray. We're going to be putting here a foam shower tray that slopes to the inside of the shower, because that's going to be a very long linear drain over there. All right, so we've come back the next day and our pour is nice and dry. So I'm just going to check it with a level. Okay, nice and flat. Nice and level. We'll check it this way. Same thing. You always can check, you know, if there's any rocking. There's no rocking on the level. So, done. Now I just want to make sure that if you're going to use this method with the pins to gauge how much your pour is, that you pour over your pins. So like, what do I mean by that? Just take notice that you can't see any of the pins here. So that means that I cleared my pins. This pour might be a 1/16 over what my gauge pins are, but that's okay. I want to make sure that I have enough material so that the product can do what it's supposed to do and also meet the pour requirement that I wanted. So the next steps are going to be to install the pan. We just pulled the measurements and we're sending them off to our friend Paul, who custom makes the pan. So if you want to see how that's installed, just check out the next video, which we'll link below. Well, actually, we're not linking it below. Just check out the next video in the series and we will teach you all about how to install one of those custom foam shower trays. So as always, thank you guys for watching and we'll see you on the next one.